It's always a pleasure to spend some time with our good friend, CEO of Illinois Policy Institute. That's John Tillman. John, good morning to you.
Good morning. I am the CEO of the Illinois Policy Institute, but this morning I'm going to speak personally and on my own behalf rather than the Institute, if that's okay with you guys, because it's an interesting topic.
Absolutely, yeah. You certainly have the need to address this, I would think.
Well, the Pat Quinn campaign has been calling names and they called John Tillman a racist, and you've been on with us. Gosh, I have no idea.
Dozens of times, it seems.
And we don't think that's the case.
Nope.
We've got we actually pulled, John, the audio from the conference that the Quinn campaign is pointing to say John Tillman's a racist guy. Would you mind if we played it so people can hear what we're talking about?
I would be proud to have you play that.
All right, here is John Tillman, and this is the audio that the Quinn campaign is using to call John Tillman a racist.
They love to talk about how the minimum wage helps poor, disadvantaged, and minority people. Think about that video we saw of Jack Roser's life earlier and those children walking into St. Elizabeth's School. You saw those kids on that video. Remember them walking in? They were 7, 8, 9 years old. Imagine those kids when they're 17, 18, 19 years old walking down a street on the south side of Chicago or the west side of Chicago. If we have a low minimum wage so employers can afford to bring in a new employee who's just learning how to work, developing their skills, trying to get a leg up in life, help wanted signs go out. When we raise that minimum wage to $8.25, is those kids, when they're 17 or 18 and grown up out of St. Elizabeth's, walk down that same street, when they walk by those stores, the help wanted signs are taken away because that employer can't afford $8.25 an hour. And so those kids keep walking, and they get to the corner, and what do they find at the corner? They find a member of the gang offering them a job to be a drug runner. Is that the choice we want to make? Those kids are our heroes on why a lower minimum wage is better, not a higher minimum wage, because it changes those kids' life for the worse if you raise it. It improves their life if you lower it.
That's from a 2011 event, actually. John Tillman, and those comments are the ones the Quinn campaign's pointing to say you're a racist guy.
I think it's an act of desperation, and I also think it's an outrage to take the issue that has plagued America for so long, racism, and it is outrageous when it occurs and should be eliminated. And it's, I think, just an unbelievable step for this governor to use that false charge for his personal political gain. And in particular, when he has such a bad record of employment for not just minorities, whether black, Latino, or otherwise, but everybody. Right now, for every job that's been created under Governor Quinn, 2 people have gone on food stamps. It's a terrible record, and that's why he's taking these desperate measures.
And John, it just strikes me, desperate is almost too kind a word for it, because in throwing out words like that, well, what do they think, that you're a guy who doesn't have any numbers at his disposal, that you're just making this up out of whole cloth?
Well, we mostly report the government's own numbers, including the state of Illinois, which he's in charge of. So, we are simply the messenger, and that's really why he is attacking me and trying to tie me and our organization to Bruce Rauner, because he's desperate. Because one of the things that Rauner is doing is he's making inroads in the black and Latino community like a Republican has never done, and that is what's terrifying Governor Quinn, because he absolutely needs massive African-American and Latino turnout to win, particularly in Cook County and certainly in Rockford.
John Tillman with us. He's with the Illinois Policy Institute, but as he said, speaking mainly for himself this morning, we spot into these false charges of racism from the Quinn campaign. Quinn spokesman, John, called you quoting, a tycoon who has said that the minimum wage turns minority people into gang members. I don't hear that. I don't think anyone with a fair hearing of what we played would say that that's what you said. Now, the CBO says, just judging by the last one they scored, and we've seen this in the past too, not just with Illinois' minimum wage hike, but national too, the minimum wage hike results in fewer jobs. We just heard that most recently again from the CBO on the talk about a national minimum wage increase. Your argument is that fewer that will lead to fewer opportunities at the lower end of the wage scale, which is where many people start out. And if there are fewer job opportunities, well, if there's not a job opportunity, there are other opportunities in many areas of our country that those 16, 17, 18-year-olds might turn to.
Well, that's exactly right. And the worst part of this is just the government coming in and deciding what the right wage is for a kid on the South Side or a kid on the North Shore or a kid in Rockford or a kid in Decatur. And what particularly happens when you raise the minimum wage for neighborhoods where businesses struggle to survive on the west side or the south side of Chicago and parts of Rockford, you take a job away from a Latino kid or a black kid in those neighborhoods, and you're giving a raise, meanwhile, to a kid in the North Shore of Chicago. This is just insanity. And the other, part about this is under Governor Quinn, black unemployment is at an all-time low. Since 2007, household median income has dropped by $6,500. These are the things that Governor Quinn does not want people to know. And the reason he's attacking us is because we are the loudest megaphone, along with your help, of getting the truth out, because they're trying to distort the truth for electoral gain.
And, it doesn't take a whole lot of digging, and it doesn't take a whole lot of looking around to see the numbers that you're talking about. Anybody who maybe, wants to look at what the governor says and, well, what did he say that's so offensive? Well, I think an exploration of your comments and the numbers that go along with that, they're going to realize really quickly that what you're saying is in no way, shape, or form racist, quite the opposite.
No, in fact, I'm attempting to make a call for how we can help all people in Illinois, and especially those that are most suffering under this governor's leadership and under the overall policies going on across the whole country. And the worst part of this, just to share a personal story for half a moment, is when I first moved to the Chicago area in 1985, I took over a facility in Oak Park, Illinois, which is right on the border of Chicago. We had 80 employees, predominantly white. A few years later, we had 300 employees, predominantly black, because I made a conscious decision to recruit from the west and south side. So I've created jobs personally for African Americans in the city of Chicago, and that's one of the reasons I personally find this so offensive. And in fact, jokingly, I might say maybe I've created more jobs in the private sector than this governor has.
I don't know if that would be joking either.
John Tillman with us, Illinois Policy Institute, Riley and Scott here on WROK. When we... where was I going? Mentioned Illinois ranking dead last of all 50 states in job creation. And what the governor prescribes is more of the same. And what Illinois policy has been successful in, and people all around the state of Illinois have been successful in, is stopping the Democrats and stopping the governor who wants increased taxes and more money to spend in Springfield. And it's because of that success, I feel, because of your success personally in running the organization and Illinois policy success in disseminating some of this information, that you've been targeted. Pat Quinn wants more money, more of our money to spend however he likes. You're standing in his way.
Oh, I think I'm happy. I'm so happy to see that is true. We were the loudest megaphone on the truth about the progressive tax hike, which was actually a tax hike on middle class and working class people making as little as $22,000 a year. They threw out the class warfare arguments, which they love. We used to love Horatio Eldridge stories where people went from the beginning of their career, maybe starting out poor, maybe starting out a little bit luckier in the middle class or upper class, and then becoming super successful. We used to champion that. Now Governor Quinn and his allies want to discriminate against people who are successful. Discrimination is wrong in every form. We would never tolerate discriminating against poor people. We should not tolerate discrimination against people based on race or gender or height or weight or any of those things. And I just find it amazing that they're sanctioning discrimination against people who become successful. And that is one of the things I think is so sad about this governor and, frankly, the president's policies.
Well, and I would venture a guess that nothing scares the governor more than a minority community actually sitting down for a second and examining what kind of record he has in supporting them and making their lives any better.
Well, here another good example of why they're worried is I think they know that the message is penetrating. We actively communicate with all communities in the state, and so our political campaigns, and I'm sure their internal polls show them that they're not getting the numbers they had expected and that they need to win, and that's why they resort to these things. Another example is Illinois used to be number one in household income out of the Midwest states, and we've now dropped to sixth. We're being passed by Wisconsin and Iowa and others, and all of this under his leadership. And we're the ones who keep bringing that out and putting it into the news, and they don't like that, and that's why they try to weaken our megaphone. But we're going to keep shouting from the mountaintops with your help, and I appreciate it.
John Tillman, Illinois Policy Institute, with Riley and Scott here on WROK. And before we let you go, John, I don't know how much traction this story has gotten in Chicago. It's and I was thinking, maybe we shouldn't even bring it up. It's not a serious allegation. But then I thought, you know what? People deserve to know how low the Governor Quinn campaign is willing to go to sort of demonize those who are working against their policies by calling you a racist. So even if it's not being picked up around the state and it's not becoming a big deal, I don't know if it is or it isn't. I thought we should at least point it out, highlight it, and let people know Governor Quinn's not below calling people like you racist.
Well, I can tell you when you go home and talk to your 15-year-old daughter about an accusation like this, it's not a comfortable conversation. And we had a long internal debate about whether we should just try to let it lie or discuss it. And I decided I did want to discuss it. And the reason is that these are the kind of outrageous tactics people try to use to crush debate and dissent. And that is about as un-American, undemocratic as you can be. And that's why I've decided to take it head on and deal with it directly.
Well, yeah, and I can imagine that conversation at home had to have been a strange one. But at the same time, when you look at what you said and the way you went about things, the conversation probably went a lot more smoothly than you might think because you didn't do anything wrong here.
Exactly, and of course my daughter knows exactly who I am. Her concern was why would a governor say that? She just could not fathom why that would happen. It was unbelievable to her. Though she knows he and I are on the different policy sides, she gets that part. But these kind of attacks in her life are just beyond the pale. And they should be beyond the pale for a sitting governor of one of the great states in the country.
He's John Tillman, CEO, Illinois Policy Institute, IllinoisPolicy.org. Get over to that site and read and learn a whole bunch of things. John, as always, we appreciate your time. We're sorry you have to slog through this crap, but, there'll be a brighter day tomorrow, too.
Oh, I still have my smile on my face because I know the truth will always win out, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Have a great
Thanks,
weekend.
John.